long story short, which my stories are never short. I mean, it goes on, y'all. What? In case I didn't mention that. No. But I talk all other times except this in church. I'm a chatterbox.
Ephraim is one of a kind.
About us?
Literally.
Okay, now I like it to be organized.
There has never in recorded history been another person like Ephraim.
Here it is.
And statistically, there never will be. This was our first picture as a family, and it was just surreal to have our miracle baby in our arms, to know that after all the struggle that we had been through to conceive and all the waiting, he was here. He was hospitalized from the time he was 3 days old until he was about a week old. And so his newborns were a little later than we had planned, but you could just see he looks like a little angel. So when we got him home from the hospital, we noticed he was really cold. And so we decided we would take him to Vanderbilt Children's. And when we got there, he was taken to the trauma bay and he was put under their little temperature sensor. And I will never in my life forget the ER physician saying, "It's a good thing you brought him when you did. You might have saved his life." And it was like, oh my gosh, who said anything about his life? I had no idea that this was the territory we were in. And that was kind of the moment when the course of everything changed. As we watched Ephraim's first few months unfold, I knew that this story was just beginning. There are moments where we came dangerously close to losing him, but for the grace of God, he is still here with us. We learned he has 3 rare genetic disorders that have never before been seen together in the history of the world. And so once we had that whole picture in hand, the doctors told us that no matter how hard we chased them, his genetic disorders were bound to outrun us, and they told us that we needed to take him home and make him happy. So we're gonna draw up today's meds. He's already had one set at 6 a.m. and then he'll get meds at 8 a.m., 2 p.m., 6 p.m., 10 p.m. And so I kind of draw them up and lay them out by time on the sink. And that helps us keep everything straight. He's got a bunch of pills that have to be crushed, so we do that as part of it. So Ephraim has 3 rare genetic disorders. And the disorders are each rare in their own right, but the doctors have at least some understanding of what they do in isolation. What they do not know is what they do when they're combined with one another. They do interact with each other, they do influence one another, and that is the part that Ephraim is showing us day by day. We learn as we watch him each day what these disorders do when they are in conjunction with one another. All right, Babs, you ready for it? Do you want to do orals first, or do you want to do tube meds first?
How about I take orals with blackberry?
We can probably do that. We can take those downstairs and do that if you want. Yeah. All right. We knew that these weren't going to be issues that he was going to catch up from. These weren't going to be things where he could have a surgery or he could take a medicine and he would be all better. These were challenges he was going to live with for the rest of his life. And so I knew he was going to have to be phenomenally resilient. I love you.
Love you.
Our doctors want my husband and I to know what challenges might lie ahead, and we're good with those. But I have hope that this child will do things that medically he shouldn't do, because there is a God that has been watching over him from the very beginning, who has delivered him from some situations that he shouldn't have made it to the other side of. All right, mister. that is done. Do you want to do respiratory next, or do you want to do blood pressure next?
Blood.
Blood pressure? Okay. All right, Betty, can you get your shoes, socks, and orthotics and take them over to the couch for me? Let me know if you need help. Good job. I don't know whether you're going to be put on YouTube or not. That's a question for Mr. Patrick, not Mommy. Do you want to be a YouTube star?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ephraim was particularly excited at the prospect of doing this documentary because he thought that it might make its way to YouTube. So that was his buy-in for sure. All right, do you want to put your wings on, Mr. Butterfly?
Yeah.
All right.
You want to show Mr. Patrick your beads?
Look.
What is it?
So what are those?
Beads of courage.
Each bead is a procedure or a day in the hospital.
And different colors mean different things. These fish beads we get every time we go to Cincinnati for traveling for care, right, Ephraim? The stars are for surgery. Every star is a surgery that you've had.
And these yellow ones, or this kind of glow-in-the-dark, is X-rays.
Yep.
We counted them once. Weren't we over 1,000?
Oh, the number of feet when you spread them out is absurd. And actually, we stopped when he was probably 4 or 5 because I didn't want to bankrupt the program. What do you say?
Trick or treat.
When I think about our goals for Ephraim, a statement comes to mind that was shared at a friend's daughter's funeral. And it said, if you're going to ask them to fight for their lives, you have to give them a life worth fighting for. You want bag of bones? Mm-hmm. Okay. And I think that has guided a lot of our raising Ephraim. Ring the doorbell? It has been so important to David and I that we give him a life worth fighting for.
Trick or treat.
Just experiences in the world. We have done everything we can to ensure that his medical issues don't stand in the way of him having a full childhood replete with joy.
Thanks.
You're welcome. I like to say that God gives these kiddos the qualities that they're going to need for the paths that lay ahead of them. And I definitely think that has been true in Ephraim's case. Despite all that he's been through, Ephraim is one of the most creative, imaginative kids you will ever encounter. And he keeps those around him in stitches, and often he does so unintentionally, which is maybe the best part.
So, it's kind of weird how it happened. I had a business named Starbucks, and then he had always spoken with the board of directors and took over. And he renamed it Red Nose Brew.
He runs a coffee shop through our kitchen known as Red Nose Brew that he has been in operation since 2018.
This is my apron.
And the sole proprietor is Jimbo the Clown.
He's the owner. I'm the head barista. Do you want coffee?
I would love some coffee.
Do you want espresso, cappuccino, latte, cold?
Espresso sounds really good.
Yeah. Okay, and then this is a...
Is that a red nose?
Yes. Look.
Red Nose Brew is so real to him. And I think he needs that magic in the midst of a life in which he's experienced a lot of things that many adults haven't. It is a place of deep joy for him in the midst of a life filled with chaos and turbulence. Red Nose Brew is his place of escape. Whether he is creating a Microsoft Teams chat, printing out a list of members, building his website, researching security cameras for Red Nose Brew to catch the thieves who are mommy and daddy not paying for their coffee, He takes his work so seriously. He faces some significant challenges, but he is extraordinarily bright.
Sometimes if you just play around with it, you figure out how to use these things.
You want to sit first? Do you think that's easiest? Yeah.
What, so am I getting any shots?
No, you don't have to get any shots.
What we were the most concerned about, of course.
That's fair. That's fair. I first met Ephraim when he was about 4 months old. At that point, all that we really knew was that he was a fussy baby, but we didn't know exactly what it was. We were looking for things, and we just weren't finding a great answer. Yeah, that's my name. Number one, it's not like common to see a 1-year-old with dysautonomia,
Which is, in layman's terms, everything your body does automatically without you thinking about it.
your breathing, blood pressure, your heart rate. All of a sudden, all these systems that are supposed to regulate everything kind of go haywire all at once. You know what to do without me even asking. Very good job. It didn't make sense. Okay, we're gonna. But we really had a breakthrough when we sequenced his entire genome.
And that's how we learned about his 3 genetic disorders. The first one is a partial trisomy of chromosome 2, and that conveys a lot of his developmental and emotional struggles. The second disorder is something called CACNA1A. We sometimes call it CACNA1A, and that is a disorder of the body's calcium channels, and it affects autonomic processes. It also affects his muscles. It causes migraines and episodes of unconsciousness. The third genetic disorder is something called OCRL1, and that conveys electrolyte abnormalities, kidney stones, blood that is too acidic.
I don't know how we make a medical prognosis for him. These are not things that have previously been described, much less described together. And so there isn't anybody who can tell you what he can do or not do. I mean, in my opinion, we just don't know. Expert advice to do that.
Ephraim started in physical therapy by the time he was about 4 months old. So by the time he was 10 months old, he was enrolled in occupational therapy, physical therapy, feeding therapy, developmental early intervention. It was pretty much a full-time job. We were at the therapy clinic 4 or 5 days a week. At that point, I was just so fixated on Ephraim's delays. Oh my gosh, he's 40% behind. We have to catch him up. We have to catch him up. We have to close the gap. All I could see were the delays and that he was not making what I would consider adequate progress in therapy. And I sampled all of the therapy clinics and all of the therapists in Williamson County. We were throwing darts in the beginning. We were checking boxes. And I don't think I realized that this was going to be a marathon and not a sprint. So when Ephraim was about 4.5, we got a call that he had come off the wait list at the Equine assisted therapy place. We were just checking the boxes. This is yet another therapy.
I was really prepared to talk to his parents about maybe not being able to provide services because he seemed so involved. And then when it came time for his assessment, he comes bounding in the door. Very quickly, we realized Ephraim would be fully capable of riding a horse.
We began doing that weekly. We added that to the weekly therapy schedule.
When Ephraim was first on, his hips and his, upper body and chest were a little wiggly and wobbly.
He definitely has his lowest muscle tone in his core. This is ultimately coming from one of his underlying genetic disorders.
He would fatigue fast.
He couldn't maintain the position for more than a few minutes. It was like, okay, we're going to do everything we can. We're going to give him every service and every opportunity known to man. And then if he doesn't get there in the end, at least we went down swinging. At least we can pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, it wasn't because of anything we didn't do. But we noticed that he was becoming less and less fatigued at the end of each lesson. And we started being able to stretch out the amount of time that he was on the horse. And that was really exciting to see. His instructor was gushing to me about how quick he was to pick up on the things she was teaching and how naturally this came to him. And I just said to her in amazement, nobody has ever said my kid was a fast learner. And she said, this is going to be his thing.
So you okay?
Yeah,
All right,
just
good.
my trachea malaria.
That's okay, just checking on you.
It does that a bunch.
That's okay.
But usually at night,
Oh,
or when I
gotcha.
do my cough assist,
Yeah.
which also helps,
Yeah.
and inhalers, So I've been at Saddle Up for, I think now 4 years. I'm great at horses. That's another one of my strong suits.
All right, now let's practice a few times of our 2-point to warm up our legs. Oh, Ephraim, I like your 2-point. You're looking where you're going. That's awesome.
I love horses. And Dumpling, she was the best.
Ephraim, with all his different diagnoses, he is also on the autism spectrum,
That's a way different food.
which a lot of times kids on that spectrum can have challenges with social communication.
This feels like velvet.
But Ephraim kind of leans to the side of that spectrum to where he is very talkative.
I'm learning the code HTML.
Oh, are you?
He is very willing to share any information he has with anybody he can talk to.
And it's like a design program. I got it off of Canva. It's fun.
Well, look who's
Here.
What is that? The first time I met Ephraim, his personality and his demeanor just grabbed me. I said, whatever Ephraim's class is, whatever he's going to be in, I want to be involved. Are we gonna be concentrating on the course? Or are we going to be talking it too much?
She's like, now focusing. And I'm like, whoever, focus, smokers. Who wants to focus? Here's my microphone.
Oh, let him do it, bud. Wait, let me set this down and I'll get it. You did really good
And you
out there,
can
man.
probably trim that part about the microphone.
Right.
I've had termites put down my nose, so it felt like somebody was tickling inside my nose. And I think I even tried to fight them.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you win?
No, sadly.
Ephraim has wanted a sibling for as many years as I can remember. We did some genetic testing, knowing what the risks were because of Ephraim and because of the things that we were carriers for. And of course, we prayed for a child without Ephraim's issues. We prayed that he would avoid the genetic disorders that Ephraim had encountered. But we felt God calling us to go all in. We got Enoch's diagnoses about 11 weeks into my pregnancy. And when we got those diagnoses, I will be transparent and say that I cried my eyes out for 2 days. Not because of who Enoch was. I was not one iota sad for who he was going to be. I knew he was going to be amazing like Ephraim, but for what he was up against. No mother wants to see their child face unimaginable obstacles and be against insurmountable challenges. Enoch is also one of a kind in that he has 2 of Ephraim's 3 genetic disorders, so that means that his presentation is a little bit different than Big Brother's, and he is the only one, again, on record to have had these 2 disorders in tandem, and we are learning daily what that means, and we are also lourning that even though Ephraim shares this disorder, the presentation can be very unique from one child to the next. Bubba's in the kitchen. I think he's doing something on his computer. Go figure, always.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ephraim, from day one, has been so protective of Enoch, so understanding. He will come to him when Enoch is doing something difficult, like an enema, and say, "It's okay, Enoch. I know how hard it is to do an enema. I've done this before. You're almost there. You're doing great." He runs to him. And the relationship that they have, I think, goes beyond a lot of typical siblings, because I think they're able to relate to and understand each other in a way that, frankly, no one else can understand them. They have some shared experiences because of these rare genetic disorders that nobody else they encounter will be able to relate to. And I think that connection and that bond is something really special. I think God knew better than we did what we needed. And I think that's the story of these 2 children in our family.
I don't even remember the math, but it was some astronomical number of like, what is the odds that Ephraim would have the combination of 3 genetic things that he has? And it was really like he shouldn't exist on the earth. Like, it's, there's not enough people on the earth that he should have existed, basically, if you look at the odds. And so the odds of having 2 kids in the same family with this combination of things, I mean, it gets, again, like, we're talking about universal numbers.
Sound like you almost have to throw darts.
There was a lot of dart throwing going on with Ephraim. I mean, we just kept going and trying to find specialists who understood or had seen this before, at least maybe one kid with something sort of related to it, or someone who was willing to sort of think outside the box. Everything about him is thinking outside the box. Every little change we make, we have to try to balance it out carefully, because disrupting one thing, it might help one issue but hurt another issue. And so his dysautonomia needs hyperhydration, but his kidney disease and his kidney issues make that more challenging. He has these migraines, which are almost like drop attacks, where he can't suddenly move.
He would be standing there talking to you, and then out of nowhere, he would just drop to the ground. And it's terrifying to witness. And I said, we've got to figure out why this child is dropping to the ground unconscious 30 times a day. This is not an acceptable quality of life. As we started to grasp the complexity and, frankly, the uniqueness of Ephraim's medical needs, it became clear that we needed the best of the best. We needed a place where doctors worked collaboratively across disciplines to meet the needs of complex children. We needed a place where kids like Ephraim were the bread and butter, rather than the exception to the rule. And that place was Cincinnati. I thought, how are we going to do this? How are we going to travel 5 hours for medical care? How is David going to step away from work to do this? Buckle up for safety. There were so many questions, and yet it was clear that that was what needed to happen for our child's benefit.
Cincinnati is where kids who no one else can figure out go.
I need you to do deep breath.
There are a few hospitals like that in the country and in the world, and Cincinnati is definitely one of the very top.
They were willing to roll up their sleeves and dig in to figure out what was driving a lot of his medical problems, and they were not intimidated by his atypical presentation and by the uniqueness and rarity of his diagnoses. And no matter how many curveballs he threw, they were determined that they weren't giving up on this child. I mean, this was a kid that was in the hospital monthly for years. And so to go from 137 days inpatient to over 700 days without one of them in the hospital is beyond all we could have hoped for. This is our new mask, so we're gonna see if it's inflated enough, okay? Why is it whistling? Excellent. Okay, cough for me. Didn't feel good. We're almost done. I'll mess around with the amount of air in the mask later, okay? Good job. All right, you ready for inhaler?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Which will be way better than this.
You don't prefer cough assist, do you?
No.
You don't love it. It's just one of those things we have to get through. I think anytime you have a child who is not typically developing, who has medical fragility and medical challenges, there's a grieving process that you walk through. As you learn to let loose of some of those expectations that you had of what that child and their childhood were going to look like, you realize that things that are simple for other kids, like eating, are things that require hours of therapy and devices and medications for your child. And I think it's hard for any parent not to be heartbroken over that. The process of learning who Ephraim is and embracing that child has been a journey for us. When kids are little, a boy picks up a doll and you don't think anything of it. When we allowed him to make choices about things like choosing his equipment, like his special needs car seat, he would go right to, I want the pink one. I will never forget when Ephraim was about 3 and his PT looked at me and said, Mackenzie, he's just not a ball kid. And he's not, and he never will be. And I can already see that Enoch is going to be my kid digging in the dirt with baseball cap on backwards, rolling the ball with you. Oh, do you see the ball? You found the bowling ball, didn't you? Of course you did. If there's a ball to be found, you will find it. As he aged and we gained more clarity around those issues, I did feel an initial sadness, not unlike I felt when he was diagnosed with special needs. Not for who he was. I've never been sad for who he is, but for what he was going to have to face and what he was going to be up against. We have almost lost Ephraim multiple times, and the fact that he is here is something that I'm cognizant of every day of my life. It's something that I never take for granted.
This is even better than real.
Oh, did she get a spare too? He is here to play with dolls. And how lucky am I to get to purchase an American Girl doll at Christmas, because it means I have a living, breathing child who's not in the hospital. Okay, Joss, here's your next one. Go, Joss. Oh my goodness, you got a spare. You got all 10 down.
Enoch, can you clap?
Say yay.
All right, so let's put our hands out like airplanes to start our upper body warm-ups. So can you put your hands out?
Airplane, airplane. Scratching.
Have an itch?
Yeah. Oh. I can't do both. I'm not an octopus.
Can we twist right and left? If he's being a little lazy, Ephraim, you can help and give him an extra squeeze in time to walk up.
Walk up. Walk up, Chip.
All right.
Chip, I said walk up. Or maybe it won't.
Maybe it won't. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Horses, silly horse. Ready to do a heel hold?
I'm ready. Ready?
Each year, Saddle puts on a program called Super Show, which is essentially a horse show for their participants to compete in.
Whoa.
Good.
That was fun.
That was good.
What we're gonna do, we're gonna weave the red, white, and blue poles, go over the ground poles in a 2-point. Stop.
For months beforehand, the kids work on dressage patterns. They work on various skills in the arena that they will be evaluated on during Super Show. They learn their routines. They practice their routines until they have them smooth, and then they compete.
Then you can go, then you make a full turn.
Thank you all for joining us for our 2022 Super Show. We have classes number 19, 20, and 21 coming up.
Tuck your tubes in. I think one of the senses of loss you feel when you realize that you're going to be raising a child with disabilities is that you're not going to get some of those typical parent rites of passage. There's not going to be a first T-ball practice. There's not going to be a first ballet recital.
Entering our indoor arena is Ephraim, rider number 44 on chip.
Steer.
Watching him at Super Show, I said to somebody amidst just the pride, this must be what typical parents feel like at a T-ball game.
Oh, here, and then we're going to weave these.
This must be what it is to watch your child hit a home run.
Now
Eileen, now ready?
Sure.
Here we go.
And that wasn't an experience that I'd ever had as a parent.
Whoa.
And so to get to watch him be independent and succeed in a sport and walk away with that sense of accomplishment with the world watching was as much a gift to me and to my husband as it was to Ephraim.
You did that great.
Thanks.
And you didn't knock me into the pool.
Despite all these hardships that he's dealing with, the joy that he brings to me and to others, there isn't anybody who doesn't know him and love him. He's a unique one. He's a special one.
I love him so much. That could not have been more perfect, Mr. Ephraim. I'm so proud of you.
Thanks. I love this place.
What I understand now, 8 years later, that I didn't understand at the onset of our therapy experience was that the goal was not to close the gap. The goal was to help him be the very best version of himself that he could be. And I understand now that his delays are not something to be sad about. Who he is something to celebrate. We've learned that Ephraim will exceed any and all expectations placed on him. I mean, this was a kid that was not supposed to live to see kindergarten. There will continue to be challenges and struggles along Ephraim's journey, but he is one of the most resilient kids I've ever known. He's got an unshakable faith, and he has a network of people in his life who are cheering him on, speaking truth into him, supporting him, and encouraging him. And I know that they will see to it that he has the very best, fullest life, happiest life he can have. We knew early on that we were about to embark upon a difficult and sometimes painful lifelong journey together. But what we didn't know in that moment was what a massive blessing that was going to be.
You might want to turn it off.
You want me to turn it off for a second? Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me just set the camera down. And look up for me. Look up at the sky. There we go.
It's hard to find under all those ribbons.
I know. You got it. Perfect.